Okay, welcome. This is the February 2021 meeting. Glad you could make it. Or if you're watching this recording, um, missed you, but all right, let's get into it. So, quick meeting agenda, uh, design goal synopsis, spring 21 semester plan. Basically, the point of this meeting is going to be to go over the generally the semester plan, right? We're going from last meeting. If you went to the first meeting, I basically just ended it by saying, okay, go do it, go do your own thing, research rockets, whatever. But the goal of this meeting is basically going to be to solidify a lot more of that, and to sort of introduce a lot of organizational elements like sub teams and different stuff. Basically, we're getting serious for this meeting. So basically, that's the meeting agenda. And okay, the first thing I want to go over is a few design choices. So design choices meaning like basically stuff, last meeting we decided we want to do a liquid rocket. There's a lot of different types and different ways you can configure a liquid rocket. And so these design choices that we have to start making, like what we see here, and these are just going to be a very basic first few questions. First of all, what's the design plan? What are we going for? We're going to design a rocket engine, and if you know anything about like rockets, if you went to the last lecture and maybe you've done some of your own research, I don't know, but if you have, then what you know is that a rocket engine is very, very complex, and it's not just one part; it's many different parts coming together, and it's requiring probably splitting it up into many different subsections to get the overall design. But we're just going to design the rocket engine and the related systems, like the piping used for the fuel, the valves to control the pressure, the all of that good stuff. And we're going to be designing it not just as an engine, a standalone thing, but we're going to design it with an arbitrary payload and based on a hypothetical rocket, meaning, this rocket engine is going to go inside of a rocket hypothetically. So what does that rocket do? And we still don't really know exactly what that hypothetical rocket is supposed to be made for, but we're going to be taking inspiration to start out with from IREC. IREC last year was a thing, and unfortunately IREC is not a thing anymore, but we're essentially trying to replace it with this like new rocket project. But they've really been the only rocket-oriented thing at UTD, like pretty much ever. So we're going to just take inspiration from them because we are starting from scratch as well. So we're going to be using their criteria. And if you were in IREC, you've heard this a million times. Their criteria, which was to send a payload either 10,000 or 30,000 feet. The payload has to be at least 8.8 pounds, right? Something like that. And it's maybe not going to be exactly what that was, but we're taking inspiration. The point is, we're not designing the whole rocket, though. We're just designing the engine so that if we put it into a rocket, it would do those things. Okay. Another design goal, a design choice, would be the propulsion method. So with liquid rockets, there's several different ways to propel them. First of all, you could have a pressure gas system, or the other one is a turbopump system. So just to, if you could bear with me, I'll just explain what each of those is really quickly. So a pressure gas system is basically you have pressurized gas in a tank. That tank is connected via pipes to the fuel tank and the oxidizer tank. So we have 3 tanks, the pressure gas tank and the 2 other tanks. And what we do is we feed the pressure gas through the pipes into the liquid or the fuel in the oxidizer tanks. We feed it in. And those 2 tanks will be displaced. That means the gas is coming into the tanks and it's squeezing out the fuel in the oxidizer into the combustion chamber. The fuel and oxidizer has to go out of their tanks into the combustion chamber, and that causes the rocket to ignite and go. As opposed to this, the turbopump system is essentially accomplishing the same thing, but without any need for any pressurized or high pressure gas on board. Basically, a turbopump is something that takes the relatively low pressure content of the fuel and oxidizer tanks and feeds it through a pump, which causes them to be higher pressure, um, which will basically run the entire rocket by itself. It creates I guess a vacuum, and it basically pulls, the pump will pull the fuel and oxidizer out. You don't need any high pressure gas to do that. So basically, two general, very broad ways. There's obviously many configurations for each of these options, but the very broad ways is the turbo pump system or a system that doesn't use a pump, right? Um, and what we thought would be a good idea would be the pressure gas system. And that is because it has already been done by IREC. They've already done a lot of design work on it. It's a simpler system, but it's still enough of a challenge that it create a great design project, right? But yeah, the main reason is because IREC already did it. So pressure gas, meaning we're going to be using a high pressure tank and feeding it into the fuel and oxidizer tanks, forcing those out through a series of pipes into the combustion chamber, and that's how we're going to make our rocket. All right, with all that done, we can move into the semester plan. So, Jarrett, you can do this one, right?
Yep. This is the general timeline for the spring 2021 semester. This is going to be taken month by month, so if it looks a lot at first, don't fret. Overall, we are going to be splitting into teams to, like David said, get serious. And these teams will focus on specific areas of our rocket engine because it's complicated, and specialization will allow us to research more in depth and share those findings with the other teams. And this will be done with presentations at meetings. We will be, this is overall. So overall, we are planning to design the rocket and engine virtually and test via simulation. And from there in the future, we may even get building it. This, of course, could be even years in the future. Just this semester, this February, which is this meeting right now, we're announcing the teams and overall goals. Next meeting in March, we will have the teams completely formed, and there will be more on that shortly. And we will discuss engine objectives. In April, we'll start doing some team research presentations for those who are ready. These will be very casual. There's no stress here. This is not a class, and this is not a competition. We're taking it slow. We're doing it right. And in May, we'll continue with presentations, and we'll begin talking about designs and narrowing our options. In the far future, we'll get a little bit into electronics, and even further, we may go back to turbo pumps. Who knows, if we think we can handle it. And we may even start working on some exteriors, make this engine look nice, maybe even incorporate it into a complete rocket. But that is far in the future.
Okay, so going into the future, but focusing on right now, what you guys could do to prepare for the project overall. Before the next meeting, we would like you, all of you, to basically read this source. I have it linked. It's in the Rocket Project channel in the Discord. What you would do is click on the link, and it's not like an easy thing, and honestly, we wouldn't expect everyone to understand it. I mean, it's very advanced. You'd probably need to do a lot more of specifically rocket stuff to understand every little thing, but it's a great overall summary. So if you click on that link, if you open the slides and you click on the link, you'll go to the textbook that I'm talking about, and then chapter 6 actually relates specifically to fluid to liquid rockets, right? It really specifically to liquid rockets. Actually, chapter 6 through 13 all do, but 7 through 13 is very in depth. But 6 is a general overview of the design of liquid rockets. So I would recommend read chapter 6, and then you'll be ready. We'll be ready to go for the next meeting. Also, chapters 1 and 2. That's because I happened to read chapter 2, and I found a lot of fundamental rocket terminology and other fundamental stuff in there that I did not know before. So I found chapter 2 very necessary for just general background knowledge. I didn't actually read chapter one, but chapter one's probably very fundamental as well. So I also recommend reading chapters one and two uh, in any textbook, let alone this textbook that I'm recommending right now. But yeah, basically read those sources. That's what I would recommend. And if you do, you'll be a lot more ready for the rest of the semester. And this is just, if everyone does this, we'll all be sort of more on the same page, and that'll just really help things speed along later on. Um, Anyway, once you have read that source, the next step would be to decide what subteam you're most interested in. Last slide talked about the subteams. There's 5 different subteams, as Jared mentioned. So you would decide which one you're most interested in. We're going to be assigning people to the subteams based on what they're interested in. So um, this is the only way we're deciding it, you know? So that being said, we would want you to also decide which one you're second most interested in, third most interested in possibly, just so we can sort of optimize who goes on what sub team. And it's purely based on interest. So we're gonna we're gonna try to like get you where you said you want it to be. And that survey will come out in about 1 week. We'll put it out, um, and then you guys can fill that out. The reason we're doing it in a week is so just to give everyone some time to read on their own, figure out what this stuff is. The reason I have reading the source, just to mention, the reason I have reading the source before deciding what sub team you want is because it's good to just know a little bit about every sub team. Chapter 6 of that textbook, it gives you a complete overview of some like basic subjects within liquid propellant rocket design, and the sub teams are all encompassed in there. So you would read that hypothetically and be like, oh, I know what these sub teams are now, and then you would be like, okay, I want to do this. That's the idea. But yeah, that survey is coming out in about a week. So yeah, just look out. Just keep your eyes out for that. All right. Next slide.
So, here in summary for this month, you should start thinking about what team you want to belong to and start doing some research into that specialization. Like David said, we will be sending out that form in about a week, and by the next meeting, we'll have the teams finalized. So be prepared with the first and second and maybe even third team choice. You may not get your first pick, but we will try to make everyone happy. In general, it'd be a good idea to look over some software and simulation software, design software, I meant to say, such as SolidWorks, if you can. These skills will help down the road in the project and almost always in your careers. And this is the most long-term thing to note. It'd be a good idea to start thinking about different rocket objectives for our arbitrary rocket, because that will determine what we want our engine to do. So do we want our hypothetical rocket to go to orbit? Do we want it to be a sounding rocket where it would just go up in the high atmosphere? How much payload might we want to do? Maybe just a small sensor. So just start thinking about that. That won't even really be discussed for a couple months, but it's an important thing we need to figure out for this rocket. With regarding the teams and specialization, I will be trying to get out specialized resources for each of the teams. So that would be another thing you can look at when you're trying to make your decision. So keep an eye on the Google Drive the Google Drive folder for those to pop up. And if you are not in that yet, I will be updating permissions based off of the interest form that is in the chat right now. If you are not yet in it, but you have put in that form, it just means I haven't gotten to you yet. I promise I will be doing that very quickly. You can move on to final slide. I don't know if you did or not. I can't see it.
Oh, I did. I moved on. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So if you remember from the interest form, we had a question slot. So here were 4 questions we were asked. So what's the differences between liquid, solid, and hybrid fuel? So a purely liquid rocket has the oxidizer, such as liquid oxygen, and the fuel, such as hydrogen, in a purely liquid, cryogenically cooled form. And these will be pressurized and mixed together in a chamber and ignited. A solid rocket has both of these pre-mixed together as a propellant called the grain, and that is all in one huge chamber and ignited. Hybrid fuel has the fuel as the grain, solid, and the oxidizer as a liquid, and that gets pumped into the big chamber containing the solid hybrid fuel, or solid fuel, and lit there. There are instances where you will have the oxidizer as a solid and a fuel as a liquid, but there's practically no instances of that happening in the real world. There's maybe been like one or two rockets ever designed like that, so don't worry about it. The next question was, I'm in computer science, but I'm interested. What are some knowledge gaps that you would recommend someone not in traditional engineering to go over? So a huge one is thermodynamics. And it's important to note that a lot of even the more engineering people probably haven't gotten there yet, because it is a higher level class. Many of us are standing on the same page where we know nothing about this. The project in itself will have a lot of traditional engineering concepts, but just in terms of rockets, we're all starting from scratch there. So as long as you research that with the rest of us, you will generally be on page. And if it ever runs into a traditional engineering concept you're not sure of, there's plenty of people there to help you. Maybe feel free to look over anything. But if you have any questions about it, you can literally just ask us, and we'd be happy to explain it or introduce you to it. But don't worry about knowledge gaps, because we are all starting from square one. We're all learning together, and we'll all be sharing information with each other. We'll all get there. The next question is, will we be doing any in-person stuff? And we would love to. Doing meetings like this and getting together and designing virtually or whatever would be more fun in person. But that's all up in the air right now due to stuff up in the air right now. Hopefully, by the fall semester, there'll be a lot more in-person stuff. Everyone will be back on campus, but we don't know. This semester it will be pretty much all virtual anyway. We'll see what the future holds for that. And the last question gets really... Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just no, that was a good joke. You were like, you said something earlier. You were like,
Thank you.
Yeah, it was good. It's pretty solid.
I'm a cool person.
You're very cool.
So for who am I? Why do we exist? To suffer? I would say based off of 2020, yes, we are here to suffer, but we exist to build rockets. So that is what we will do together.
Good. Well said.
Thank you.
And then since this is just a recording, there's really no discussion. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys are as excited as we are to get this underway. And look out for those interest forms and that survey. All right. See you later.